Rents in Ireland are continuing to increase. In 2018, Dublin was the fifth most expensive city in Europe to rent in, with an average rent of over €2,000 per month. How is it that a country with a history of building council housing has become one of the worst for rents? Housing policies by successive governments since the late 1990s have been primarily focused on the private market. Fianna Fáil stopped building council housing in the 2000s in order to facilitate their developer cronies in selling houses with high mortgages to ordinary people dreaming of owning their own home. The reliance of the private market to provide housing continued following the economic crash of 2008. Even as homelessness grew and rents began spiralling out of control, the response by the Fine Gael government have been the same. Out of rebuilding Ireland's target of 27,360 homes in 2019, over 19,000 are due to come from RAS, HAP and leasing, that is, the private market. That's more than 2/3. Even the paltry social housing build targets set by the government are not being met. In South Dublin County Council, the target for builds in 2019 was 435, but between January and October only 49 homes had been completed, and there was 0 build starts in that same period. The main reason for this is because the government's housing policy restricts social housing builds to small infill sites of less than 100 houses. Any larger estates would not receive funding from central government. Instead, large publicly owned sites such as O'Devany Gardens in Dublin City and Kilcarbery in South Dublin have been sold off to private developers for less than half social housing. Filling the gap in the rental sector, American vulture funds have swooped in to buy up large amounts of homes. According to Threshold, there are now 12,000 less tenancies since 2016, and less than 40% of all landlords have mortgages. Many so-called incidental landlords have left the market, while corporate landlords have filled the gap, charging extortionate rents. The vast majority of the now over 10,000 homeless were evicted into homelessness from the private rental market. Many landlords use sale of the property as a reason for termination of lease. This needs to be stopped immediately. It means that if a home is sold, the tenant should have the right to stay in the property. This is common practice in other European countries. There have been recent calls for a rent freeze to make it illegal to increase rents. This would be a step forward. However, rents are so unaffordable, particularly in Dublin, that rents need to decrease to affordable levels. Threshold estimates that for rents to decrease, the state needs to own 25% of rental stock, but current levels are as low as 9%. Even local authorities are now moving to increase rents. Budgets in both Sligo County Council and South Dublin County Council included rent increases for council tenants. This is a worrying development when other European countries are seeing market rents being introduced in public housing developments. Building large-scale public housing on state-owned sites could take thousands of individuals and families from the housing list out of private rented accommodation. This would reduce demand in the private market and decrease rents. The income threshold of public housing needs to be increased to allow anyone regardless of income to access good quality state housing. To do this, we need a movement of people power for housing in 2020, and we need to make housing the main issue in the general election.